Hello, everybody, and welcome to our second uh, Impact Informational session of this year. My name is Grant Minix, and I'm with the Council of State Governments, and I'm alongside Patty Glenn with the Federation of State Medical Boards. I'll give Patty a second to introduce herself before we get into the presentation.
Did you just make us a medical board? I mean, we do consider ourselves medical, so that works.
Massage therapy board, my bad.
I know what you meant. I'm Patty Glenn. I'm the Director of Education and Professional Mobility with the Federation of State Massage Therapy Boards. And my primary task in my role right now is working on getting this Interstate Massage Compact stood up so that we can realize the portability and reciprocity here in the US for massage. So, Grant, I'll give it back to you.
Thanks, Patty. So we are the Council of State Governments. We working to develop this compact for massage therapists. The Council of State Governments was founded in 1933 as the nation's largest organization, which serves all three branches of state government. We're a region-based membership organization that fosters exchange and exchanges ideas from different states and promotes best practices, all to satisfy our mission of championing excellence in state governments in order to advance the common good. Specifically within the Council of State Governments, we have the National Center for Interstate Compacts, where I work, and we have an agreement with the Federation of State Massage Therapy Boards um, to develop the Interstate Massage Compact. The National Center for Interstate Compacts was founded in 2004, and it seeks to help states work cooperatively to solve mutual issues and meet shared goals. We serve as an information clearinghouse on interstate compacts. We provide training and technical assistance, like we're doing, such as what we're doing here with Impact, and then we help facilitate states that are our members in the review, revision, and creation of new interstate compacts. So I'm going to go through a quick overview of kind of what's the basics of Impact, why we're here, and the basis of this project. So first off, you may be asking, what is an interstate compact? An interstate compact is a legal and legislatively enacted contract between two or more states that allows states to cooperatively address shared problems, maintain sovereignty over state issues like professional licensing, or respond to national priorities with one voice. You can see there on the right an example of a very good example, which compares well to the Interstate Massage Compact, an example of another interstate compact, which I think most people are familiar with, and that's the driver's license. The driver's license is a result of an interstate compact. All 50 states are a part of it, and that's what enables you to to drive in additional states, just in a similar structure to what the Interstate Massage Compact's purpose is. So while there are numerous interstate compacts throughout the country, that range anywhere from driver's licensing all the way to wildlife preservation or preservation of natural resources or transportation, but one of the more recent developments in interstate compacts have been occupational licensing compacts. These compacts facilitate multi-state practice for professions like massage therapy. They maintain or improve public health and safety and preserve state authority over professional licensing. 51 states and territories have adopted at least one of these compacts, and with 42 of those, 42 states, 42 of those have adopted at least three. And then over 360 pieces of compact legislation have been enacted since 2016. And we've worked with Council State Governments, we've worked with 17 different professions to develop active interstate compacts, and including massage therapists. And here on the next page, you can see those professions and some of the numbers they have. I know it's a little tight screen, but um, you can see really some major healthcare professions like physicians, nurses, psychologists, physical therapists have had quite a bit of success in the interstate compact realm. Um, we've got a ton of experience with healthcare professions. Maybe that's why I alluded to the medical boards earlier. But now we work with fantastic groups and fantastic professions, all of which have seen quite a bit of success in recent years in trying to facilitate multi-state practice through interstate compacts. And just another note on that last slide, a lot of professions you saw towards the bottom weren't necessarily not successful. Many of them are new, such as massage therapy, and as we work to try and develop and enact those in states. And the whole beginning of this process starts with a development process. Um, CSG, well, we at CSG and the National Center for Interstate Compacts have a cooperative agreement with the United States Department of Defense due to their interest in doing this for military spouses, but also the compact is open to all professionals who are eligible. And we part of that cooperative agreement, we're developing compacts for 10 different professions. And in 2021, FSMTB responded to our request for proposals for compact development. They were accepted through a competitive application process, which was reviewed by us at CSG and the Department of Defense. And the first step of that process was developing a technical assistance group. This consisted of a broad and diverse group of around 20 stakeholders from the profession. It included licensees, board members, board staff, and officials, as well as educators in the profession and staff from some of the major organizations like FSMTB, AMTA, and ABMP. We convened this group virtually over 3 months, and this group made initial recommendations to the next working group, which was the compact document team. This is a smaller subset of the TAG, which had more of a legal and legislative drafting experience. They took the recommendations from the TAG and worked to create an initial draft of the compact based on those recommendations. We at CSG circulated that initial draft out to the public, where we received public comment, hosted weekly meetings to the public to review the language and explain the provisions. And that process came out to be very fruitful, as we had over 600 comments during this 8-week period. And we reviewed all those comments with the document team. And in December of 2023, we finalized the compact draft, which is now available for states to enact, which was inclusive of both the TAG recommendations and the public stakeholder feedback. So truly a document that was vetted thoroughly by the profession and by the public. So I want to talk a little more about the development process. So we've, as we said, finished up phase one, which is development, and moving, now we're fully into the education and enactment phase two. At this point, you can see the highlighted segments here. We're at the point where state support, developing a network of champions who, either sponsor the legislation or support it, providing on-site technical support as needed, informational testimony to legislative committees, as well as helping out through the enactment phase, such as tracking and supporting state enactments, preparing for transition implementation of the compact, and providing additional support as needed in the states to help enact it. And then once that's done, once this is the compact's enacted in enough states, there's a threshold of 7 states in order for a commission to be formed, and we'll assist with setting up that commission, which will consist of delegates from each state as they look to govern the compact. With that, I want to turn it over to Patty Glenn for an overview of the model legislation.
And it helps if I unmute. Okay, thank you so much. I'm already seeing questions coming in, and thank you for your questions. We didn't really talk about that at the beginning. We will do Q&A at the end. That just keeps it simple, and then that way if we end up covering your question by the time we get to the end, we'll kind of do it in the flow of the program. So next slide, please. There we go. Perfect. So I think it's important to talk first about some of the terms that you may or may not be hearing as it relates to the Interstate Compact. So we keep talking about what is a member state, and the member state is any state that has enacted has adopted the legislation or enacted the compact language. And then we have what we call a home state. The home state is where your initial or primary massage license is issued. And so similar to your driver's license, if you reside in Washington State is the state in which you have your driver's license. So for most people, your home state for massage is going to be the same state where you vote and hold a driver's license. If you vote and hold a driver's license there, that's your home state. And one of the questions we've gotten is, well, what happens if I'm a mobile therapist and I work a few months here and a few months there? How do I really know where my home state is? Or could I designate a different home state? Again, the default is back to where do you hold your driver's license? Where does the government consider you to reside? So now that might help to clarify some of the questions. What is your remote state? A remote state is any state in which you don't hold a home state license in. So you could still have a license in another member state that isn't your home state. So, for example, you may hold a license in New York and also in Florida or Georgia, and you live and reside in New York, that's your home state. Florida and Georgia would be remote state licenses. Your multi-state license is a license that's granted pursuant to this compact that authorizes you to practice in all remote states. Again, remote states are member states of the compact that are not your home state. So as this compact begins, we'll have a few home states. As Grant mentioned, a few remote states. As Grant mentioned, we need 7 states to stand up the compact. There will not be a compact commission or a compact without 7 at a minimum. And then as other states enact legislation, they will come on as additional remote states for you, depending on where your home state is. Or it might be that your home state comes in and joins the compact. An authorization to practice is what's granted through this multi-state license. And that's what allows you to practice in some of these other, or in the other remote states. One of the questions that I saw come up already today is, will remote states be notified if someone is working in their state? So if you are working outside your home state in one of the remote states, will that remote state be notified? And the short answer to that is no. The reality is that right now, when people hold multiple licenses, we don't really know where people are working anyway. And similar to your driver's license, you don't notify the state next to yours or the states you might drive through on a road trip. You are required to know and understand those laws. You go into those states, you operate under the guise of the laws in that state. But you do not, there's no mechanism in place that requires notification. That said, we'll talk in a minute about the database. There is a mechanism to know who has multi-state licenses and who is able to practice in your state and to have an awareness of their knowledge and information. Compact Commission, or the commission, as we've referenced, it becomes a joint government agency made up of all the members, and it is responsible for administering the compact. So while it takes 7 states to enact the compact, every state that joins the compact will be a member of the commission, and then they will ultimately elect a governing board that will help deal with the development of rules and the ongoing oversight of the multi-state license and the compact itself. Okay, so what's the process? First, an LMT who wants to practice in other compact states, and your state or home state must be a member of the compact. So the state in which you reside must be a member of the compact in order for you to be able to take advantage of that multi-state license. You would apply for and obtain or apply for a multi-state license, and then your eligibility would be verified, and the home state would conduct a background check. So a background check is a requirement for the massage therapy compact. You would then pay the compact fee or the multi-state license fee, and the license would be issued. And at that point, you can then practice in any of the member states for the compact. So again, somewhat different than the driver's license model, you will hold your home state license. That will never go away, and that is not impacted or affected by your multi-state license unless you have a violation someplace that could then come back and affect it. But you hold your home state license, and then you would also obtain, should you choose to, the multi-state license. So where this comes up in some of the questions that we've received in the past is on the issue of fees. Like, will this impact me as a licensee if I'm not going to use it in my state? And the intention on that is no. The intention is that the individuals who utilize the multi-state license and participate in the compact would be the ones that would pay the fee, which would help to provide the financial resources necessary to manage the compact and the multi-state license. This is just another visual that helps kind of support that idea that The multi-state license is a license that connects all of those member states together and originates in your home state and grants you that authorization to practice in those other states. Another question that came up, which is relevant and a good time here maybe to address, is what happens then if, say, I go into a state where there's insurance credentialing? Those are the questions that will need to be worked out as this transpires. But we're not new to this conversation because other health providers or health licensees, as you saw earlier, physicians, counseling, physical therapy, nursing, have all already gone through this process of what happens then to become credentialed if you hold a multi-state license as opposed to the home state license. We've had a question previously about what happens if I need to have my massage license in order to obtain a business license in that area or in that state or city. Again, these are things that we will work with. The commission will work with these jurisdictions, states, municipalities, to make sure they understand that this multi-state license gives you the authorization to practice massage in that state. And so you should be able to participate and take advantage of all of the different resources available, provided you have the appropriate training background to do so. This just shows you the complexity as an overview, and we don't need to dive into this in detail today. If you have questions, please feel free. You can access the actual legislation, the compact language itself, at massagecompact.org. And so just to give you an idea of the various sections that make up the compact language itself. Go ahead, Grant. So a couple that we want to point out and draw attention to, because I think this is a point of confusion when you're hearing people talk about the compact. There are member state requirements and there are individual multi-state license holder requirements for the therapist. And so Article 3 covers the member state requirements. And the requirements that your home state must have to become a part of the compact. It must license and regulate massage therapy. So it cannot be a certification like or a voluntary certification like California or a few other states. It must have a licensing and regulation component to it. It must require that licensees satisfy education requirements prior to being licensed in that state. But it's important to note here that there isn't a specificity on hours. That state simply must have a requirement of education in order to obtain a license. They must require some form of continuing education or continued competence for license renewal. That does not mean that they have to have 16 hours or cover certain topics or content. That is left up to the states to decide what is best in their state. But they do have to have some sort of a process by which they're doing continued competence or continuing education as a requirement for their renewal process, or have adopted one by the time a compact is stood up. And they must accept passage of a national licensing examination as criteria for the massage therapy licensure in that state. So the state must accept the MBLEX as a requirement. That does not mean the licensees have had to take the MBLEX, and we'll talk about that nuance in just a moment when we talk about the individual requirement. But the state itself must utilize a national licensing exam. It cannot simply utilize a state-only exam to be eligible for the compact. They must notify the commission of disciplinary actions that might be taken against the therapist or a licensee. And this is done through the Massage Therapy Licensing Database, or MATILDA. And so all of the compact states, all of the member states will have access to that data, which will let them know where home state licenses are issued, when the multi-state license was issued, and any actions taken against licensees or against the licensee. They must comply with the rules that are established by the commission. They do have to require a background check for licensure. However, Grant, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's for the multi-state license. So even if they don't require background checks for their state license, they have to have a mechanism in place to do the background check for a multi-state license applicant, I believe.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to clarify that. They must participate, like I said, in MATILDA, the Massage Licensing Database, and notify the commission or other members of any disciplinary action. And they have to have a mechanism in place to receive and investigate complaints about licensees practicing in that state. So the concept of the disciplinary side is very similar to your driver's license in that as you drive through other states, if you get pulled over and ticketed or cited, like let's say I get cited for doing a U-turn, on a left turn arrow because I thought I can in my home state, but in that state, that's not legal. You have to have a specific U-turn arrow or U-turn signage. That I'm expected to know and understand and comply with the laws in that state, and they will ticket me in that state for that behavior, and I will have to pay the fines or go through whatever process that state requires. That will also be reported back to my home state. The home state may choose to take no issue with that whatsoever, but they just are aware that a ticket happened. And that could be the same case or would be the same case here with the licensing database. Your home state would determine whether or not the infraction that happened in another state is relevant to your licensing in your home state. So hopefully that will help clarify that a little bit as well. Multi-state license requirements. You must hold an active, unencumbered, single state license to practice massage therapy in your applicant's home state. So essentially you must have an active license to practice in your home state that isn't encumbered by disciplinary action or probation or anything like that. And this is again for the therapist to hold. You have to have completed at least 625 hours of massage therapy education or the substantial equivalent, which the commission may approve by rule. So we're working on some clarifying information on this now, but Grant mentioned that advisory or the technical group, the TAG group, and their conversations and the feedback they got from public conversation. And it is the intention or was the intention of the TAG group that the 625 was not specified as core hours so that it left open the possibility of continuing education to be used for individuals whose core education might have not met or exceeded that 625 hours. We cannot speak on behalf of that commission because it is the commission, once it stood up, that will promulgate those rules that will then help to finalize these details that are here. What is substantial equivalent? But I do want to put that out there because we've been really clear about that this, if you did not attend a 625-hour program as your core education, there are still ways to obtain the multi-state license through additional education. Or there will be, we expect that there will be. You must have passed the national licensing examination or the substantial equivalent, which the commission may approve by rule. Again, when that TAG group met, it was their understanding through the comment period, through their discussions, that the exams that were owned and operated by NCBTMB and utilized for state licensure would also be included in those exams available to obtain a multi-state license, if that makes sense. Again, those rules will be promulgated by that compact commission once it stood up, and there will be a public comment period for individuals to give feedback into that process. But that was and has been the intention of that TAG group since the inception of the compact. And then you must pay all required fees related to the application. I don't know, Grant, if you want to talk about this at all, but each compact commission has kind of there's a variety of different ways, I guess, right? That compact commissions have addressed this. Sometimes the money might be taken at a state level, might be taken by the commission directly. Again, that's something that will be determined by that compact commission as to where and how those fees are paid, correct?
Yeah, so states will be able to set, they'll set a fee for the multi-state license just as they do for regular massage license, and then the commission will charge a fee with that as well. Or they'll make the decision to do that. Typically, they do have a commission fee. Typically, the fee for a multi-state license is more than your typical license, but keep in mind it is an optional additional pathway to multi-state practice, and that is one license that gets you in the door at any of the compact member states. And the cost of a multi-state license is always going to be lower than paying the fees and maintaining multiple licenses. So.
Right. Perfect. And as well, in this situation, for those of you who are multi-state license holders right now, holding licenses in multiple states, let's be clear about that, sorry. For those of you who hold licenses in multiple states, one of the things that I've heard from you in feedback has been it's frustrating to remember what I need to do for continuing education, or my renewal cycles are different. And so just tracking and maintaining different documentation and information and getting things submitted on time, it also obviously eliminates or removes that burden as well. Okay. When you're ready, Grant, sorry.
We on the next one now?
Yes, sir. Oh, nope, I'm sorry. I'm making you jump ahead and we're not quite ready. My apologies.
Good.
Oh, no, you did. Never mind. I'm going to just go back to the slide. So in addition, you cannot have any felony convictions within the last 5 years, no misdemeanor convictions related to massage therapy within the last 2 years, no adverse action on your massage therapy license within the last 2 years, have not previously had a massage therapy license revoked or suspended in lieu of discipline, and have no previous convictions relating to kidnapping, human trafficking, human smuggling, sexual battery, or any other category of offense, which the commission may designate by rule or will designate by rule. These are very specifically included in massage therapy due to the challenges that we've had with some bad actors of illicit establishments encroaching on our profession. And it's important that it was stated to be important to the profession, I guess is probably the proper terminology, that a mechanism was in place so that the multi-state license did not become a tool that could be used by bad actors. And so the background check, the criminal background and history piece, and obviously sharing of information through the database are all ways in which the compact helps us to abate bad acting. Okay. So Article 6 covers adverse action. So if an LMT violates the Practice Act in their home state, then then the LMT's multi-state license would automatically be encumbered because a valid unencumbered single state license is a requirement for you to hold that multi-state license. So your home state is your primary state. Your behavior and actions in that home state and decisions around that home state license do have an impact on your multi-state license or your ability to hold that. And again, adverse actions are reported into the data system and are therefore available to remote states as well. In addition, when the remote state conducts an investigation, so if an infraction happens in your remote state, the remote state would investigate it, conduct their investigation. The presence of current significant investigative information is then reported to the other remote states, again, via the data system. And then after final action is taken in the remote state, the LMT's home state would review that information in the data system and decide whether or not they would take any action on the multi-state license. So your home state license and your multi-state license both originate in that home state, and the ability to maintain that is overseen by that home state. Okay, do you want to talk about the Compact Commission in a little bit more detail, Grant?
Sure. So the Compact Commission is common, a commonality definitely between all the occupational licensing compacts and then many interstate compacts generally as well. It's a joint government agency of the states, it has one representative from each member state. It's used to facilitate the implementation of the compact, govern the overall operations of the compact. They also create workable procedures and standards, so we might, call in rules to a level of detail that's not really specified in the compact, gives a little flexibility for it to actually be administered. Rules are limited to the implementation of the compact and to those licensees using the compact. So rules can't be promulgated for anything outside of directly relating to the multi-state license and interstate practice. And that doesn't include, I think we'll touch on a little later, but that doesn't include things like scope of practice, or other aspects such as like the actual practice of massage therapy, just the principle of the license. Also, state legislators maintain authority over those rules. They can be rejected if voted by a majority of state legislatures. Um, Rules cannot apply to practitioners not seeking to practice via the compact. So, if you're an individual with just a single state license in your state or maybe another state, the compact will have no impact on you, or nor will the rules, which are promulgated as a result of it.
Awesome. Thank you. We're not going to dive too much more deeply with this group because we're predominantly therapists into the actual sections. But Section 8 covers the establishment of the commission, which Grant just spoke a little bit about. Section 9 of the language covers the data system itself, and to function, the compact requires that the commission develop, maintain, and operate a data system. The beauty for massage is that the states have already been working together to develop Matilda. So we are a little bit ahead of the game than some other compacts necessarily have been, because they've had to go in and develop a data system that maybe didn't exist. We already have a data system that is in use right now by some states. And so that'll make this more seamless as we transition into the land of Interstate Massage Compact. And then the Section 10 talks about that rulemaking that Grant just mentioned. The compact gives the commission the power to promulgate rules in order to effectively and efficiently implement and administer the purposes and provisions. Now, what we haven't talked about, we may talk about in a minute, but it is important, and I'm seeing some questions pop up. The compact commission member for the member state is their executive director or a designee of that executive director of the board, or the individual who serves in that same capacity, because states have different terms that they use for that. So they can have a designee, or it could be that individual. So it's important to remember that the people who are standing up this compact commission are individuals who are dealing with these challenges and issues on a daily basis. So I noticed that some of the questions coming up are about who's bearing the costs of investigations, how does that play out? And in reality, it plays out very similarly again to the driver's license. If you have an infraction in another state and you're cited in that state, you have to go to court in that state, go through their processes. You may pay any relevant fees or assessments that are assessed to you in that state. So the state that you're practicing in is the one that will address the infraction. The state where it occurred is the one that will address that initial infraction. However, your home state still has the authority to act on infractions that happen in remote states as they pertain to your multi-state license. Okay, hopefully that was not as clear as mud and actually made sense. Okay, let's move on. Perfect. Section 11 is oversight, dispute resolution, and enforcement. So you find that interesting. Section 12 covers the effective date, and it also has the language around how to withdraw and some other information in there. The construction and severability is covered under Section 13, and Section 14 talks about the binding effect of the compact and other laws. So they're very deep, detailed, technical components of the compact that most therapists listening are not going to care as much about. However, legislators do. And again, you saw that list that Grant brought up earlier of all the varying professions who have gone down this path before. This language has been thoroughly vetted by a number of compact commissions, and we get to benefit from the best practices of compact commissions that have come before. Okay. So quickly, let's talk about what happened in 2023 and 24. So in 2023, Nevada, right? 2023, Grant, that's correct? Yes?
Yes.
Nevada actually adopted the compact. So they were the first state to adopt the compact legislation. In 2024, it was enacted in Ohio. And then it was also introduced in Virginia, New York, Alabama, Wisconsin, Kentucky, and Washington. Virginia is the only compact language that is still open, I guess, because that bill will carry over into the 2025 session. These others had a variety of different outcomes for a variety of different reasons. So if you have specific questions, if you go to the massagecompact.org page and you hover over any of those states, you can still click on the information to get to those bills and that information. So The only ones that are colored differently are where we have things actually happening. But again, if you hover over Washington, you can click in and see that bill and dive down into more information on what happened in your state. Yeah, perfect. Okay, so let's talk about the current state of massage therapy licensure and why this is so important. And we'll get through this as quickly as possible so we can have as much time for questions as we can. So let's look at this lovely patchwork quilt, which is quite beautiful, but it also really illustrates the challenges we've had with portability and reciprocity in massage therapy. Every one of those colors represents a variation in minimum education, as you can see in the color chart. And feel free, I mean, you can zoom in, whatever, to make that easier for you to see. In addition, based on some recent rules that were changed for the Department of Education, which are currently in limbo due to some pending lawsuits, many states have changed their hours recently. So you'll notice that Colorado, Louisiana, Missouri, Nevada, New Jersey, North Carolina, Rhode Island, and Tennessee have all had hours increases in 2024. And those are a direct relationship to two things. One, historically, massage education in regulation is a minimum standard. It's not a maximum standard. It's been a minimum standard to ensure entry-level public safety. And so this prior Department of Education rule allowed schools to teach up to 150% of the state minimum and still qualify for federal financial aid. So in a sense, what's happened over the last decade or so is that states haven't had to change their statutory language, which statutes are intended to be evergreen and not have to be changed on a regular basis, because changing legislation can be challenging, as we see and hear on the news all the time. And so to not have to keep going back to the legislature with bills, these minimum numbers have been allowed to remain. What happened with Department of Education is they said, we're going to switch to just 100%. So whatever your state minimum is, that's now your new maximum for education. If your state says 500 hours is the minimum, 500 hours is what you can qualify for federal financial aid. As we mentioned, that's going to be fought out in the courts by a number of schools and organizations that are working to find a better solution. But that's driving this change. Why 625? That 625 number came from the work done primarily through the entry-level analysis project, or ELAP, that was done over a decade ago. So next slide. Part of the information that helps us to feel comfortable and confident about this 625-hour requirement in the language is the current number of hours being taught around the country in massage education. So you'll see in this graph that while the state numbers represented in green, the state requirements, the mean was 594, the median was 550, and the mode was 500. The hours taught by the schools far exceeded that, with a mean of 722, median of 700, and a mode of 750. So we know that schools in these states that are under the 625 minimum standard requirement have been teaching above that in most cases for quite some time. Go ahead, Grant. Just a little bit of additional information to show or illustrate how varied the landscape is currently in massage therapy. And again, you'll see, to reinforce this, this was AMTA's 2024 Massage Profession Research Report. And they indicate there in the middle where the arrow is that the average number of in-class supervised hours that were required for entry-level programs was between 601 and 700. And the average number of clinical hours required between 81 and 100 hours. So somewhere between 682 and 800 hours of education, if you kind of add those two numbers together. The other thing I think that's important is when you look at this upper right-hand graph, and you'll notice that way back from 2018 through 2023, again, down on the bottom, that average number of hours was anywhere from 647 to 639, but it's actually never dropped below 625 hours. And then when you jump down to that bottom, that kind of helps to identify or speak to where these numbers came from, you'll notice it says that therapists with less than 500 hours of initial training are either more experienced therapists or were grandfathered into their state license, into their state license, or therapists who are practicing in unlicensed states. Only 16% of massage therapists have less than 500 hours of initial training. So when you think about that gap from initial core training to that 625, if you came in with under that, it is not that far of a reach to be able to make that number. Go ahead, Grant. Okay, so let's talk about the other challenges we have. The regulatory challenges we see right now are a lack of national licensing database. So a sharing of information has been difficult historically. As I mentioned, Matilda's up and running now. That is helping to address that issue. There has been a variability, as we just saw, of initial education hours. On top of that, right now, we're dealing with a pretty significant impact into the profession with human trafficking or illicit massage businesses or establishments, and also fraud. Where there are opportunities in this world right now, unfortunately, bad actors will attempt to manipulate that. So one of the benefits that we see with the Interstate Massage Compact is it creates a network or a net of licensed therapists that will help, or that we believe will help to weed out and prevent some of the current trafficking or fraud that we're seeing in both school issuance of diplomas or certificates, as well as unlicensed practice. We have a significant labor shortage right now in massage therapy. Bureau of Labor and Statistics is reporting an 18% growth expected. However, at the ISPA conference this spring, we heard there were 7,500 openings. Actually, that's probably not right. I think it was 17,500 openings for licensed massage therapists in the United States, with massage therapists making up 74% of the revenue in the spa industry. So when you think about this, we've got a shortage of therapists and we have high demand. Again, it sets up the opportunity for bad actors to try and infiltrate. So another reason why it's helpful to be able to improve and increase our professional mobility. Inability to leverage telepractice is another challenge, but we don't really telepractice as massage therapists. So that's not something that necessarily affects us. And then license portability can be very costly for a practitioner. For someone who wants to practice in multiple states, it can be very, very expensive to try and do so if you're able to jump through those hoops. Because again, the other challenges we hear for licensees attempting to get licensed in states subsequent to their initial home license is the fact that maybe they can no longer access some key or critical documentation necessary for licensure, or the particular state they want to get licensed in requires that all of their schools are previously approved by that organization or by an organization within their state in order to be able to accept that transcript. And so if the school that you attended wasn't already previously approved, then that transcript may not be recognized. So these are the challenges that we're seeing from the regulatory side that we're attempting to work through and mitigate on a daily basis, and that we believe the Interstate Massage Compact will help with as well. All right, let's talk a little bit about myth busting and some questions, and we'll open it up to you because I see tons of stuff in the chat. So requirements in the impact will restrict individuals from becoming licensed in a state. That's been alleged. That is false. There is no restriction, as Grant and I have both mentioned, on your ability to obtain a license in any state in this country that licenses massage therapy. The multi-state license is a separate license that you would hold should you choose to do so, and has no downward impact. States maintain their autonomy. The MBLEX will be the only eligible exam to qualify someone for a state license. And so therefore, if you didn't take the MBLEX, you're going to have to take it now, which I know 10, 20, 30 years into practice might seem really scary. Heck, a year into practice, it might seem scary. That's also false. You do not have to take the MBLEX. The MBLEX has to be recognized by the state or accepted by the state in order for the state to become a member of the compact. But as an individual licensee applying for your multi-state license, that's the conversation we had earlier that will be addressed through the rules process. But we fully expect that national certification exams used for licensure would be recognized by the commission as well. We expect to see that they would adopt that. My state can only join if it requires 625 hours or more. Again, we've talked a little bit about that. The state can join as long as they have a requirement for education. It does not specify how many hours for the state. So that's also false. Will impact affect the state scope of practice? Not at all. State autonomy is the most important thing we have in this country from a lot of people's standpoint or perspective. And the multi-state license, again, is a license that allows you to work in those states, but the states maintain, the state boards or the state departments will maintain, and legislature maintain the authority over their own scopes of practice, over their own licensing requirements for home state licenses. How will impact reduce my licensure costs? Well, that's a great question. The reality is that for us as individual licensees, if we choose not to get the compact, it will probably have no impact whatsoever on our licensure costs. However, if you currently hold licenses in multiple states, as we're finding out more and more people do, it will help to reduce it. As Grant mentioned earlier, you'll have one fee for your multi-state license, as opposed to having to pay separate licensing fees in each state in which you hold a license. How does the compact deal with continuing education requirements? Again, that falls back to your home state license. So you have to maintain that home state license, and the home state is where you will obtain and meet your continuing education requirements and maintain your multi-state license. Provided that you maintain that unencumbered home state license and your multi-state license, you'll be able to work in any member state. How will impact increase public protection and reduce unlicensed practice? I think we've covered that quite extensively here. We're hoping there'll be even more ways as things move forward that this will help to build awareness, to build awareness and reduce the opportunity for fraudulent practices. So I don't think I have anything more to add to that, but you might have some in questions here in just a moment. Okay, let's talk really quickly about how to get involved. So the model legislation, as we've both talked about, has been finalized and is available for the states to enact. It is available on massagecompact.org. Once we have 7 states that have adopted that legislation, the commission will get to work developing those rules. So we've kind of guesstimated on what a timeline could look like, but if we were able to get 7 states, or the remaining 5 states, to enact the compact in early 2025, and they began to get working on the process, it is possible you could see multi-state license issuance by sometime in 2026. So I know that's a question that comes up frequently, is when will this happen? In fact, Grant, wouldn't you agree that most of the emails you get through that website are, how fast can I get it, or when can I get it?
Absolutely. It can be a sort of a semi-long process. It has been for a few other compacts as well. But with the work we're doing at CSG, setting up commissions for other professions, we went over to some of those professions earlier that have a lot of enactments, and their commissions are standing up. We're taking lessons learned from that, and really, as we're working through this, really speeding up the process of getting these compacts activated quicker.
And next page, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. So if you're working with a legislative drafter in your state, so a couple things. One, you'll have mine and Grant's information here at the end of the slide, and you can email us through massagecompact.org if you're interested in getting more involved. There is a survey that is out on the Interstate Massage Compact or Impact Facebook page. So if you're not already following the Impact Facebook page, there's not a lot on there right now, but there is a link to the survey and a link to register for these webinars. And there is still one more that's currently scheduled coming up, and we'll have some additional scheduled as well. So as far as how to get involved, those are some great ways that you can start to get involved. If you do the survey, the last question in the survey actually asks what level of involvement you're interested or able to do. If you are able to work at the legislative level to help get drafters in your state, then you would use the final compact language from massagecompact.org. You could contact Grant or myself or both of us as early as possible to review the language in that bill. it says in there clearly there's not to be any substantive differences or changes or material changes, maybe is the right word. Um, Grant, can you talk
Yep.
just quickly about what that means?
Yeah, so with each state will introduce their own legislation. Some states have small degrees of changes they make to legislation. A lot of people shall or may is common, or just little nuances to how they draft legislation. And a lot of times those small nuances don't have any impact on the compact. But substantive changes to the compact language uh, won't allow a state to be able to fully join and be able to issue multi-state licenses or accept practitioners. So, what we do at CSG is review the bills that are put forward in every single state. We compare that with the model legislation, which is currently on our website, and look for any substantive differences, so we can go ahead and address those with the bill drafter and potentially the sponsor to get that cleared up. And that's rarely an issue, but largely because we do such due diligence on those that legislation. So
Perfect. So there's some questions around that. We're not going to take that time because you guys have so many questions and it's 12:52 already. So let's move on. Okay, as far as stakeholders getting involved, there's a lot of ways you can do that. So please reach out to Grant or myself. You can reach out to professional associations and talk to them about what they're doing and how you might get involved through them. Or you can reach out, as I said, through your own personal legislators or legislative contacts that you might have. And then just here is the screenshots from our massagecompact.org website itself. Again, you'll see on that site there is a contact map that shows the states that are enacted. If there was actual pending active legislation right now, those would show up in the lighter green color also. So right now we again have the two that are enacted, but we're not in legislative session, so no current legislation happening. The center is a screenshot of the resource page that shows you where you can go to find the Interstate Massage Compact model legislation. There's also an impact fact sheet that can be printed, as well as a section by section review and a template for the letter of support if you'd like to send letters of support into your legislators. And then again, on that right-hand side, some more information about the Interstate Massage Compact. So the website itself is really designed to provide you with a depth of resources that will help you to understand it better and to be able to provide information to a legislator without having to know it all yourself. All right, Q&A. Grant, are you watching that chat?
yeah, no, I've been checking a few things out in the chat, and I'll go ahead and kind of state some of the questions, give a response to it. Patty, just pitch in as you see fit. So, first question we got up at the top is from Christy. Is if there's a database to check the massage therapy compact license, like they have in the state of Arkansas, and the client or police can check if that person is legal or not. And the states maintain the autonomy over their shared database. So in this, I know a lot of states have a license lookup function on their website. Or an individual or law enforcement can go in there and check, put in an individual's name and see if that individual has a license and authorization to practice in that state. And that could be a similar process states would take, but states have the full authority to do that if they so choose to. I know that's a common practice, but they would typically, it's anticipated that the state will maintain that same process of a license lookup. So.
There was another question that ties directly into that, Grant, while you're pulling up the next one regarding specifically, is that information public information, the information contained in Matilda? And no, it is not. That is a regulatory database shared between the regulatory states. The information being shared may or may not be available in that home or in that specific state, depending on what their public records laws are. So it goes back again to the state autonomy. So this is a way for regulatory community to share information. But I think, like Grant mentioned, we would definitely expect there's a way to verify that somebody is a holder of a multi-state license in good standing. But that'll be part of the commission's work that they'll be doing in that next phase.
Yeah. And I got a couple questions on continuing education requirements. Someone noted that Ohio doesn't currently have continuing education requirements, but they did enact the legislation. And so, as Patty talked about earlier, Section 3 or the requirements for a state to join the compact. And those, as in join, we don't mean enact the legislation. Any state can go through the legislature and enact the language. But to be able to, once the commission is stood up, like we've said, of this process, it could take a couple years for the state to be able to issue a multi-state license and then accept individuals with a multi-state license. They would have to meet all the requirements in Section 3, and that includes the continuing education requirement. But there is a time frame for Ohio or other states. If they don't have that requirement in place, they can do that before it will be time to issue multi-state licenses. So that shouldn't be a deterrence to any state of trying to enact the legislation. It's a common thing in other compacts where we um, have to talk with states that have joined and say, you need to put this in place to be able to join and fully participate. And then there was another question down in the comments on that about, do all current compacts require continuing education requirements for renewal? Um, Not always specifically in the language, but we noted, the drafting team noted that there are states that don't have these continuing education requirements, such as Ohio. While other professions, and that made the drafting team want to put that requirement in place to ensure that those continuing education requirements are in place. But the compacts where there isn't an explicit requirement for continuing education, all 50 states have that in place. So there's no need to just explicitly state that in the language, but it is extremely common for someone with for all compacts. An individual has to maintain continuing education requirements in some way, shape, or form, whether that's explicitly stated in the language or not. Um, Next question we have is on from Carl in Washington State. The Board of Massage bears a lot of costs related to disciplinary actions. In other words, license fees pay for this. Is the impact implying that my license fees will be used to pay for investigations of multi-state license holders? So when we talk about investigations that a state board is going to do, uh, realistically, with impact being enacted in a state would only investigate the same people or the same instances in which they would already be investigating. They're going to investigate actions taken in that state of Washington or whatever state, or actions that someone with a home state license, with a home state Washington license, does in another state. And I'll note that that action has to be illegal in Washington too for them to be able to take action on it. A state can't take action against an individual who's done an action that's legal in another compact member state, whether or not that's legal in Washington state or not. Um, so really, the burden of investigation is not going to be increased significantly because of impact at all, because they're still going to be investigating the same actions and the same individuals they would be otherwise. And then another note to add is that really, in a lot of cases, we see for application process and discipline, these administrative costs that licensing boards have to go through. In those instances, costs are really greatly reduced because of the data system and how it can facilitate communication between states, especially in investigations. So instead of state having to call another state and request this information, they can just get that through the data system. And in a lot of cases, it really can save licensing boards money.
Right. That was a perfect overview. I think of that, and that maybe we think of it as being a bigger burden. But again, part of that process also will be establishing the fees for the
Yeah.
license, where they're collected, where they're allocated. So that's a part of that compact commission, is to also understand a little bit more about how this will all come together.
Mhm. Yeah, and then we address the comment on database being public information. Another question we got is, efforts to work with other massage franchisees and groups like Massage Envy or Hand and Stone. Uh, we definitely have been a collaborative effort. As we said, through the development process on the CSG side, we went out for public comment. A lot of these groups have responded very positively to it. But Patty, I know you might be able to touch on that a little more than I can.
And I've been traveling more than I anticipated since I took this position and have been in front of a number of groups. And I mean, unanimously, in all honesty, I have questions about the compact that come up, but the organizations, the individuals, the spa or franchisee owners are very interested in this. One of the challenges that we have with a reduced volume of therapists and a changing workforce demographic, and that doesn't mean that it's that we've moved everybody out of sole practitioners. In fact, through our surveys that have been done by the associations, we know that about 50% of our profession still works as sole practitioners. That said, the other 50% tend to work for employers now. And this really provides a lot of mobility and opportunity for the therapeutic community, and also therefore supports the remaining industries, spa or franchisee, in being able to help move people, folks around as needed, to support their professional goals and objectives. So I just want to make sure we covered that. So I know I kind of segued off onto another tangent for a second there, Grant, but I want to make sure we cover that. We're right just over our 1 hour limit, so we don't want to keep you here too much longer. We're both absolutely available to you, but consider the fact, especially for those of you who've been around this profession as long or longer than I have been, the profession we entered is not the profession it is today, and especially post-COVID. We, in some states, lost as much as 30% of the licensee population to non-renewal post-COVID. That's a tremendous loss. So whether we're in an economic downturn, this is not a threat. This is an opportunity for our profession to really reach some new heights and to kind of move from that industry into profession. So think about it from what's possible. And I'm just going to close with a statement that I had with Kelly, who is the manager at the Houstonian, and she was sharing with me before the last major hurricane came through that she'd been shut down for a couple of weeks due to a major storm, and how great would it have been if they'd had the compact and that she could have sent her therapist to another property, even if it was in another state, to work and maintain their income and tips and all that other good stuff while they were shut down doing renovations, only to be hit again by Hurricane Barrels just a few short weeks later. So thinking about the varying ways that this supports both you as professionals and also our various professional establishments that hire massage therapists. Another quick scenario I just want to share is the individual whose daughter went on bed rest very early in her pregnancy in the state of Florida, and this therapist was licensed in Washington and really wanted to be able to go down and support her daughter, but was not able to obtain licensure in Florida and could not afford to leave her practice for financial reasons, and as a result was forced to choose between work and supporting her daughter, where an Interstate Massage Compact would have allowed her, provided they were both member states, to be able to go down and find temporary employment while she supported her family. So think about the possibilities and the opportunities this opens up for our profession and for the individuals that are practicing. And reach out and let us know how you'd like to help, because we'd love to have you.
And I threw up our contact information there on the screen because we got a question about that. I think looking at the chat, looks like we've addressed about every question, but I want to just open the floor up to anybody real quick. I know we're over time, but if anybody's got a question from the group they'd like to fire off, you can go ahead and do so now. Okay.
Y'all have control over your mute, so feel free to unmute if you would like. All right, that must mean we've done a great job, Grant, because nobody's raising their hand or jumping in.
Must have explained it well, but just got a point in there. We will be sending out this presentation to everyone, and this will be recorded and be posted onto the website. So the information in this presentation will be available to everyone. We'll send it out to all the registrants as well. So I want to thank everybody for joining today and sticking around with us 5 minutes later. We appreciate your interest in the compact, and as our information is here on the screen, please feel free to reach out to us with any questions or comments or anything we can do to help. So, thank you all.
Thanks, you guys. Have a great day.